Hello, everybody. Welcome back. I'm very excited to have my next guest on the show, Angela Harrolle, if I got that right.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
You call me sir, and I'm looking around for my dad. Making me feel old, Angela. She's the CEO of the 100 Club.
I don't mean to that.
She's the CEO of the 100 Club in Arizona. And for those listeners out there who don't know what the 100 Club is, Angela's going to explain it and the wonderful work they are doing for our first responder communities. But Angela, how did you told me a little bit about your background before we started. What made you, talk about your background for the listener who doesn't know who Angela is.
Sure. Well, I grew up in a rural farm community in southern Minnesota, ended up in Arizona because who wants to shovel snow?
I know, that's why I left Colorado.
Yeah, exactly. So came out here and ended up ultimately pursuing my degree in justice studies and wanting to work in law enforcement in some capacity, but I wasn't really the kick in the doors kind of type. So I'm like,
oh, that's the fun stuff. And that's the fun stuff.
I know some people feel that way, but I just really wanted to get more into maybe some casework, protection.
No, you did the smarter. You did the smarter route.
yeah, a little bit different route. So that ultimately took me to a role in federal law enforcement for almost a decade, working as a special agent, and it was a great poor man's jet set type job that took me to 45 countries. That's amazing. Even despite all of those things, I ended up back in Arizona because I saw what I felt like was the world. And I love being here and still don't care to shovel and have really acclimated to the heat. So yeah, came back here ultimately and really enjoyed myself along the way. Ended up marrying a wonderful gentleman who was a state trooper or police officer in some areas, but also a firefighter and a paramedic. So like every 7-year-old dream job pretty much is what he was doing, jumping out of helicopters, rescuing people for a living. Similar to that kick in the doors type of law enforcement, but more of that humanitarian spirit. But unfortunately, he was killed during a rescue in Sedona, Arizona, when he was trying to rescue 2 lost and dehydrated stranded hikers. And that day obviously changed the course of our future.
So sorry,
obviously, Angela. But thank you. I had 2 little kiddos at the time. And when that happened, I decided, you know what, I need to stay here. I need to stay in Arizona and just really lean into the community that wrapped their arms around us to support us through that. And there was an incredible organization that showed up at my door, and they were called the 100 Club of Arizona. And when they showed up at my door the next day, they handed me a check for $15,000. Wow. And I thought, what's the catch? And then I don't want this, but I needed it. Mm-hmm. And I just didn't want to accept it. But at the same time, I absolutely wanted to figure out a way to pay it forward because I'm a firm believer in give to the community that gives to you. Mm-hmm. And so that was my first interaction with the 100 Club. Again, I didn't even know who they were. I had no idea. Here he is in law enforcement and fire and a paramedic, and I'm in federal law enforcement. I had never heard of the 100 Club. Yeah. But it really opened my eyes and I was so intrigued, and I did take a little time after that, but I kept hounding the previous director saying, please, how can I help? What can I do? How can I help? And she's like, when you're ready. And I'm like, I think I'm ready. Well, sooner or later, fast forward, it's been 9 full years, but I am now the CEO of the 100 Club of Arizona, and we are truly honored to support our public safety throughout the entire state. But it's not just line of duty death that we support with. We support, that's what we're most known for now, but we support non-line of duty death. We do what we consider on duty, which are carcinogen exposure related cancers, specifically in the fire service. And then we also do a ton of injury support. And I would say the largest part of what we do is mental health, wellness, and training for our first responders here in the entire state. So it really is an honor to be able to do things that are a little more proactive in that mental health wellness arena, versus just that reactive as a result of an injury, a physical injury or a death. But also along that proactive side is we can also give scholarships to all the kids of public safety here in Arizona. And that's truly an honor as well, because it's a way to say thank you to them for their service. And the kids are appreciative. Now the parents are really super appreciative, obviously, because the money helps always going to college.
Yeah.
Takes a little burden off them. But it's, that's just a really super quick snapshot at how I got here and briefly what we do.
It's amazing.
Yeah,
and again, I'm
do.
so sorry for your loss, Vicki. And I'm sorry, Angela. I was thinking, I said Vicki because I recently went to some training, and Vicki, I'm sure, think you know who I'm talking about, Vicki Hickson.
She's a rock star.
Yeah, she is a rock star. And so I've known Vicki for a couple of years, and I apologize for calling you Vicki, but I was thinking about it when you were talking about, doing all this 100 Club, sponsoring all this, being more active and proactive with mental health training. I just went to training last week where Vicki Hickson was the presenter, and I went through a 2-day kind of training thing about mental health, for law enforcement. And it's amazing. But
she is one of the best in the industry. She really knows her resources and is very, and along the line of shatterproof, and along the line of what we do under our bulletproof and fireproof support under a Peer 100 program. It's just about making sure that people understand that there are an incredible amount of resources out there and taking that first step to get there. And that's where Vicki has held their hand. It's where wonderful organizations like Shatterproof and or us at the 100 Club can help facilitate people to be better.
And it's amazing. And you said it, Angela. I mean, I don't think, a lot of, well, maybe in Arizona, but I talk to a lot of first responders, and I know you do too. And a lot of the ones I speak to don't realize the resources that are out there for them. Now you have to vet those resources, as you know, and you have to make sure that, they're going to do
they're culturally competent,
that they're culturally competent, and, that they didn't know what they're doing, and they really have the interest of the first responders in mind. But your story, how you, with the tragic death of your husband, and then you're in this role giving back, to first responder families and individuals who need it. It really amazes me how life kind of works out. I never thought in a million years I would come from a military background, law enforcement background, now working in behavioral health. I know. That's just not my background.
You pick up a magic 8-ball, you shake the thing. And
I know.
Okay, all right. Yeah, I agree. I mean, how did I ever end up in a nonprofit sector? Yeah. Talking to someone about behavioral and mental health and wellness. I mean, how did I end up here? Because that wasn't my path either. But as I often say to people, eyes wide open. You never know what kind of opportunities will present themselves out of adversity. And that's key. Adversity can actually create growth.
Now, how did the 100 Club, little history, how did it come about? I mean, was it philanthropists just started this organization? They loved first responders and they wanted to give back, or what was the catalyst behind it?
Sure. Many, many, many years ago, decades ago, in Detroit, Michigan, there was an officer who unfortunately was killed in the line of duty and left behind a pregnant spouse.
Oh, geez.
And there was a gentleman that was a car dealer, owned a car dealership in Detroit. Shocker, right? The home of the automobile. So he was like, we've got to do something. We've got to support this family. And he called 100 of his friends, asked for $100 each, and got 100% support. And therein lies the beginning of the 100 Club and the actual name of it. And it really, think about, decades ago, $100 from 100 people, that would be like me calling today and asking for $1,000.
Exactly. So that was a lot of money back then.
That's a lot of money. Absolutely. So really, they're all based on the similar concept that we want to support in the event of a line of duty death. And there are well over 100 clubs in the nation. But the reality being is that we all function in different capacities. We all do different things. But the one common underlying principle is that we respond in the event of a line of duty death. We're just fortunate to be able to expand to a lot of the mental health and wellness and training and supporting in all types of life-altering situations.
Yeah. Now, I mentioned before we started, Angela, that I have utilized, not me personally, but I've helped first responders going back to, going back to that mental health component that are struggling with mental health or addiction issues or both. And I've utilized, as on behalf of the first responder, the resources that the 100 Club has, which and they're grateful for. Is it just for active duty members? So meaning active duty fire, EMS, law enforcement, or can a retired person utilize the 100 Club?
I'm so glad you asked that question, because up until November 1st, it was active and sworn public safety. However, as of November 1st, we are now able to offer continued support for mental health for 24 months post successful retirement. And we also provide financial assistance in the event of a death. Now, that was a tremendous undertaking for us. I mean, a couple different reasons. Because first of all, the death benefit, I mean, we all know there are two things in life that are guaranteed, right? What are they?
Death and taxes.
There you go. So with that said, obligating a financial support to basically every first responder that successfully retires in Arizona is a big deal. But we have been working on retiree transition now for a couple of years, and we have recognized that at the end of it all, and you've gotten out of that world and reintegrated into a new type of role. But the reality is that reintegration is hard, whether it's military or whether it's public safety. And even an expected retirement can be very challenging, because it's that, do you know who I am? I'm sorry, do you know who I am?
Yeah,
and you're like, no, actually, who are you?
Loss of identity.
Oh, you don't have a badge anymore? Yeah, forget it. But they're also used to being the fixers. Yeah. They're the ones that want to help. They're the ones that get called. And when you're not getting called anymore, we realized after talking to many different retired folks, it's about purpose.
Yeah.
And we wanted to make sure that they have a good segue and or they have the resources they need post-retirement. So you're not literally getting cut at the knees. I mean, you literally, because sometimes it feels that way. I mean, there's, the honeymoon period. And then it's like, hang on, people don't need me anymore.
Yeah, exactly. I was like that. And I lost my identity.
Yeah. And your spouse, generally speaking, is not your entertainment committee. Okay. They also have a life too. And it's important to look around and say, hey, I might need help, because as you and I both well know, oftentimes after retirement, that is when we lose our first responders. Not only to just inherently, you're used to that adrenaline every day, and then you don't have any, and you're looking for it, and you might lean to other things. So you're going to have potentially, relationship challenges, because now you're home together. And then there's coping skills, good, healthy coping skills. And then there's, I'll just go out and drink with the guys or whatever the case is. And, these things kind of add up. They add up, and we want to make sure that you have the skills you need, and or if you get there and you need mental health support, that we are able to do that. So I guess that was the really long answer to retirees.
I love
in different capacities.
I love the explanation, Angela, and you hit it. And like I said, when I went through the same thing. For the retirees out there who are listening, I'm not saying you are going through this or you will go through this.
Sure.
But a lot of them, like you indicated, Angela, do, myself included. I went through, and you hit it, getting called, I'm okay, I have a purpose. I'm needed now. And then when that's gone, I was like, well, who am I? So that added to my depression at the time. And I indicated to you, I went to treatment, and it's huge. A lot of people don't realize that. But the fact now, the 100 Club is now, as of November 1st, is supporting and can help out retirees. That's huge, because I don't know too many organizations. I don't know too many organizations that do that now.
Yeah, and it scares the heck out of us, right? Because I mean, it's like you're all going to retire, right? And you're all going to ultimately succumb to the way life is. But the reality is we recognize the issue, and those are the people that feel the most disconnected.
Yeah.
But what a great way to say thank you for their service and to let people know that we genuinely are going to stay committed to them. And we're going to do as much as we can in whatever modality of support that they need. Obviously, there are caps.
Mm-hmm.
Source either, but the reality is sometimes people can work through, whether it is like an introductory level therapy, or whether they need more advanced modality, whether it's an inpatient, outpatient, or as far as maybe ketamine or SG block type opportunities. So we all just, we recognize that there are different modalities for different people at different times in their lives.
Absolutely. And now, is that in every 100 Club across the nation, or where they're at as far as retirees go? Is that just indicative to Arizona at the moment?
I believe at this point, we're the only 100 Club in the nation that has this offering to retirees. And again, it's all about capacity. We're fortunate that we cover the entire state of Arizona, so that gives us a little more luxury. And again, we're fortunate to have the community support, through our tax credit program here in the state, and or through our license plate funding. So, and our license plate is pretty badass, so people should look at it.
It is. It's a badass license
It's
plate.
like that distressed black and white flag.
I know,
with
it's
the red
badass.
and blue line through it. So
and that's the
public safety.
and that's the one thing again, I love Colorado. I'm from Colorado. I grew up there, did my career there. And I'm not saying other states are not pro law enforcement, but Arizona is very pro law enforcement for the most part, at least in my opinion, Angela.
I think so too.
That is huge.
It's massive. People call it the Wild Wild West. I mean, you can call it what you want, but guess what? We take care of our people.
Absolutely.
But you say pro law enforcement and or pro public safety, guess what? They need backup too. And that's what we at the 100 Club do. We are their backup, because guess what? When you call 911 and you get a first responder to come to your home, you have now invited them into your story.
Yeah.
And they are expected to show up with their A game, not their B game or their C game, or my back hurts, or I had a fight with my spouse. You don't get to do that. You have to show up with your A game. And we want to stand behind them to support them and make sure that they have backup, that we can support them, because they are human too. They put their pants on the same way the rest of us do.
Absolutely.
And oftentimes our community members, they don't even realize that. They don't realize that they just invited someone into their story. They're just in a desperate need for support.
And that's a good segue. Speaking of stories, I know we talked about the 100 Club. We could spend days talking about all the thousands and thousands and thousands of successful stories from the 100 Club and who they've helped and the families they helped. But is there a couple stories that really resonate with you? And I obviously no names, but that you want to share that shows how much the 100 Club helps first responders?
Oh my goodness. There's
tons of them.
There are a ton. And if there's ever a way, first of all, you have to get them to raise their hand.
Yeah.
You've got to get them to say, hey, there's a problem here, or I'm ready.
How do you do that, Angela? What do you recommend for people out there who, you've been doing this a long time. You were a federal law enforcement officer. What do you recommend to people out there that, a first responder that is suffering right now? Not, where they need to hopefully not call 911 and get some help over there. And if they are, listeners, please do that. Call immediately.
Please.
But
absolutely.
somebody out there is listening saying, look, I'm depressed. I've just retired. I don't know what my path is. And, I'm really depressed. What would you recommend to them?
Well, I would find anyone that you can talk to. And sometimes it's better if it's a complete stranger. And I know that sounds crazy, but you could call somebody from, a neighboring state, going back to your state of Colorado. You can call an officer there, you can call a firefighter there and be like, hey, I know you don't know me, but
it's that connectivity. Yeah, it's a connectivity.
Yes. And that's one of the biggest things is often when people start to get depressed, they feel isolated. They feel like they're the only ones that are having these problems. They're the only ones that this is happening to. And the stigma, we've got to get rid of the stigma. But people need to know what their resources are, number one, because sometimes they don't know where to go. And, sometimes we're a little paranoid. We're a little paranoid that somebody's going to know that we looked up something on the internet or you were on your work phone.
And you got that label.
And yeah. And you don't want labels. We need to remove stigma, remove labels, but we need to increase awareness of resources, and people need to know that there's never a good time. There's never a good time to raise your hand and get help and get support, but start early. Start when the issues have not, turn a mountain into a molehill, or a molehill into a mountain, vice versa. But you don't want it to continue to grow.
Because that's all it's going to do. It's just going to snowball.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then I'll go back to a different analogy, and I think you probably heard this, but it's like public safety officers and firefighters are wearing this backpack. And every time they go into a call, they take a little piece with them and they throw it in the backpack.
Yeah.
And every call, and not everyone affects you differently. You might leave with a big boulder instead of a little rock and you throw it in that backpack. But you got to figure out how to empty that backpack, that cup before it knocks you over.
Yeah.
And that is critically important. So you said, what would you recommend? Number one, it's okay to not be okay. I mean, that's what everybody says, but you got to believe that. Never a good time. And people have to know where to go. And they have to understand that they're in a safe place and that people will support them and honor their decision, because it's about them at the end of the day and their family.
Absolutely.
And sometimes your colleagues are your family, and you just got to know that not everybody's out to get you. Don't be so paranoid. Everybody has challenges. So, I mean, just start.
And there's a lot of good people. I was one of those jaded cops for a long time, Angela, and that I think the job makes a lot of us that way, where everybody's a criminal and I don't trust you unless you have a badge or a star or a shield. But I think most people are good people. We just happen to see the small percentage of people out there that are getting into trouble. And I love what you said about everybody struggles at some point or another. There's only so much a first responder can see. I'm not just talking about cops. I'm talking about everybody who falls under that umbrella. And I often tell people, look, you're an important person. You are loved. A lot of people care about you, but your problems aren't unique. They're not like something that people in treatment and people who help people have never seen before.
Yeah.
So I mean, that's why, and people, millions of before you have got treatment and got help and come back to their departments, their families better, because but the key is, like you said, call a trusted friend or somebody that you can talk to. And I like your advice of sometimes it's better not to talk to somebody you don't know or that I think some of the I think sometimes people they'll talk to their spouse, and I'm not knocking their spouse. I'm just saying that maybe they don't know how to deal with it most of the time, or
they don't,
or family members. So you got to talk to somebody, a professional.
And you're right. And getting to a professional is important because you have this team around you. And maybe a spouse is a person, but you know what? You got to start somewhere. So if you're sharing it with your spouse, fantastic. But in public safety, we're known for traumatizing others just with our own stories that are like no big deal for us every day. And then you share it with somebody else and you're like, but you saw them with no arm.
I know, we got that sick sense of humor, Angela. You know that.
Yeah. And that's okay. But you've got to be in a place where it's relatable, where you can be like, oh, I had the best call, which the reality is it was a terrible call. And it ended terribly, but it was the best call. So you got to understand that differentiation between the two. As long as you're talking to someone.
Absolutely.
And as long as that group around you, it takes a village, they say, right? It takes a village. And whether it is a spouse or a family member, a sibling, a colleague, whatever it is, just talk about it.
Yeah.
Because you can't carry these burdens alone. Because if you're only seeing tragedy and you're only seeing the worst, like you just mentioned, you're seeing and interacting with criminals all day and you get disgruntled and you're like, it is similar to an everyday citizen community member. You flip on the TV and you turn on the first few minutes of the news and it's all what bleeds leads. Okay. Well, guess what? There was a first responder that went to all of those calls.
Yeah.
And
Right.
if that is all we focused on every single day, people are like, oh, I can't watch the news anymore. Oh, it's just all gory and graphic, and somebody shot this person and there was an accident here. Well, guess what? Our first responders are the ones going to those accidents, those stories, the what bleeds leads part, and they have to do it. They signed up to do it because they genuinely want to make a difference and make an impact. They don't get to turn the TV off.
Yeah, exactly. That's a great example. And now more than ever, I mean, first responders need help. You mentioned, the mental health is, on the forefront with many agencies now, along with addiction, but mental health has really taken center stage. And it is so important that for the first responders out there who are listening, that they know that there's organizations like the 100 Club out there that can help, with, financial assistance, things like that. And, it's just so critical now because our first responders are under fire, Angela, you know that. I mean, I've never seen an environment. I mean, law enforcement's always been under the gun. I think that's a bad term to use, but they've always been scrutinized, and rightfully so. They got a lot of power. But when I retired, it seems like it's just gotten, I think there's a lot of support out there for law enforcement, but I wish people were more vocal. But it's always been a tough job, but it seems like our men and women now who serve are just constantly scrutinized. You know what I mean? But thankfully, brave men and women are still getting into the field, but that takes a mental toll. I mean, on people. I mean, for instance, when I first started, Angela, and probably when you first started with the feds, I mean, there wasn't, generally law enforcement on any level was kind of, there was some scrutiny, but now you get it from everywhere, from the highest points in government to radical groups out there and, media, social media. Now it's just, I don't know. It can be overwhelming for our brave men and women out there.
It really is, for a couple different reasons. I mean, you think about everybody's wearing a body camera now.
Yeah.
And everyone wants to pass judgment upon every single thing that happens. And it's only one angle.
Yeah, exactly.
And not only that, but you can't even make a good joke anymore. You just can't. You're like, that's a great joke. And you're like, okay, well, now you're getting fired. You're like, but it was just a good joke. Like, I meant no harm to anyone.
Yeah.
So, having to sign up to become a law enforcement officer now, it's got to be tough, even though they all grew up, living their lives on video and those kind of things on YouTube or whatever the case is. Still, the idea that you're going to be in constant scrutiny every day, even for making positive choices, is really, really a challenge.
Yeah.
And then also, post-pandemic, post the situation that happened in Minnesota with George Floyd, everybody wants to pass judgment.
Absolutely.
And then they're like, okay, let's defund the police. Well, you defund the police. That means you defund fire. That means you defund those that answer your 911 calls.
And that worked in cities that now they're trying to hire back on cops again.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, because I will say, I recommend that those folks go spend some time in a country that doesn't have 911.
Yeah.
Because it's very unnerving. It's very unnerving to know that you might be having a physical health, situation. You might be having a criminal situation. 911, or worse yet, you get put on hold.
Yeah.
You get put on hold. And you have a family member who's having a stroke, which actually just was shared with me not too long ago. And she's like, yeah, I sat on hold. And I said, think about this. Those that don't want to support public safety, and they want to take money from those resources that affect the firefighter that's going to respond to your house, that might pump the chest of your loved one and save their lives. You don't want to sit on hold. You might want to think about that. Nobody likes to pay taxes, but guess what? They go to wonderful, incredible things. So we as a community, we just need to unite. Like you said, the support is good. We're fortunate here in Arizona that we love our first responders, and the community inherently does too. But we need to take care of them.
Yeah, absolutely.
We need to be their backup.
Absolutely.
And we need backup too. We need people to support us as an organization so that we can continue to give the resources to get people to that support that they need, whatever that modality is, because they are human too.
Absolutely. And they have such a tough job, and God bless them all, and the people who support them. And like you said, it amazed me that people, want to defund until it happens to them. And then they're like, where are the cops? It's just that I don't
Exactly.
get that type of mentality. I mean, cops aren't perfect, we make mistakes, but I hear it sometimes, all cops are corrupt, and really, all cops are corrupt. Really,
Yeah.
every man, woman, no matter what color their skin is, they're all corrupt. Really?
Hmm.
Okay.
Hmm.
I don't
Oh,
know what world you're living in.
to judge.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they're quick to judge. They're like, "Oh, well, I got a ticket," and this and that. And I love it when people say that
Well, don't
to me
speed.
because I'm like, "Oh, you got a ticket? Oh, better yet, be glad you didn't get a ticket every time you were speeding."
Yeah,
And then they're like,
exactly.
"Oh, oh, oh," because on your way to wherever you were, you probably sped. So be
Well,
glad. Yeah.
well, I like what you said too about, getting back to body cams, and this, Angela. I mean, I use and I wish I could say I came up with this example, but I didn't. I heard it somewhere before. I mean, think of an NFL game when, a receiver catches the ball, there's debate whether or not both feet were in bounds. And how many angles do you see of that? You
Oh,
see
every
15,
angle.
15
Yeah.
different, there's cameras coming out of the ground. They're all over the
Yeah.
place. A cop
Right.
gets one shot,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
not shooting their handgun. I'm talking about video shot. You don't see what's going on the peripherals over here on the sides. So, yes, back to your point about, okay, seeing a video and quick to judge. You gotta give these men and women a break. They're doing a very difficult job.
Absolutely.
Fire, EMS, dispatchers too, who are in years past, they've often been, I think, left behind, but they're first responders too.
They absolutely are. And you think about, I've always said it would be so challenging to be a dispatcher.
Oh,
On the law enforcement side or fire side, you are now put into the call, you're doing everything you can, you're supporting it, and you have an idea of how it ends. Whereas dispatchers, they're taking that phone call. They have no idea what
yeah, they don't.
happens after they hang up that phone. And that's a beauty and a curse, right? I mean, if you can work in that type of environment and go to bed every night with 100 unfinished stories, good for you.
Well, they don't.
But the
Yeah,
other side of that is
yeah,
that those 100 stories are getting finished,
yeah,
and they are being witnessed by our officers and our firefighters, and not every call ends well.
yeah.
So it's a lot. It's
Absolutely,
a big burden to carry.
absolutely. Angela, you're amazing. If people want to find out more about the 100 Club, can you give us a website for 100 Club Arizona?
Yes, of course. Yeah, of course. It's 100club.org. And we would love to have you learn a little bit more about us and support however you can so that we can continue to give back to our police and firefighters every
Absolutely.
day.
Absolutely. And I mentioned that the 100 Club also, I mentioned the training I was recently in by our mutual friend. And the 100 Club goes into departments and other organizations and trains, right? And offers training, right? Or sponsors training.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
That's
We will
amazing.
we will bring out some of the best in the industry to make sure that we are offering them that wellness, physical, mental health training opportunity to ensure that they've got what they need. So if people think, oh, he has everything they need. Well, the reality is you got to go through that training, that budget process approval, and that could take 6 months, year, maybe 18 months
Absolutely.
by the time you get the budget approved to attend something. Whereas we can interject ourselves when they request it to make sure that we get sooner, and maybe something that wouldn't normally be approved. The other thing we can do, we can help buy equipment to make them safer.
Absolutely.
And that's what we want to do. We want to affect the departments through training. We want to buy equipment that will make them safer so that they can continue to go home and be their best possible person to their friends and family.
Angela Harrolle, you are amazing. The 100 Club is amazing. Thank you for being on the show, taking time out
You're
of your
so
big CEO VIP day.
no, no. This is what matters. This is the good stuff.
Do you get like
to
a
be able to
private,
share
do you
this
get like a
message so
private
people can hear
plane,
it.
Angela? Is that how you zip around? You get like private planes and stuff?
You know what? It would probably keep me from being late, but I would take a masseuse first. I think I'd be like, can I just have somebody?
All right, Angela Harrolle, thank
We're
you
a
so
nonprofit.
much. Oh yeah, you are a nonprofit. So
Yeah, we are. Yeah. No big corporate budgets over here.
yeah, CEO of the 100 Club. It's been an honor, Angela. Thank you so much for coming on the show. Hope I can get you back on at some point and keep doing the work you're doing, my friend.
Well, you're very kind, and I'd love to come back and keep spreading the message.
Thank you. Bye-bye.